Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another Pittsburgh Steelers post-game podcast, where the Pittsburgh Steelers are victorious again in meaningless football games as they beat the Philadelphia Eagles 24-16 at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the wrong side of the state. Nonetheless, here to talk about the game with us, as always, Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave?
I'm sorry, I got to take a moment. I got a bit of a different background. You're probably saying it's not Tuesday night. Yeah, I'm actually at Big Bro's house doing the show, watching the game together. And I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this, but if you don't have air conditioning, why even bother to have electricity? I mean, it is brutal right now. It is so stinking up. But no one in this area has electricity because it's not electricity, has air conditioning because it's in the mountains. I wonder if they even have electricity. But now we watch the game somehow. But man, it is roasting. But if you see me keel over, send my brother a message.
All right, we will. And joining us for the first time on the post-game podcast is Bryan Anthony Davis with his new upgraded internet. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, yes. I'll take any victory we can get. I love it. I'm feeling good. And yeah, I have the same background and I have no problem with that. And yeah, the internet's a little bit better. So there should not be a 17-minute delay from the time you ask me a question to when I finally answer. So I'm glad to be back. And look at Jeffy with the Keystone. He's got a Keystone on that shirt. What's going on with that shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a 412. You got to love it.
You got to know which side is the right side, and I mean the correct side. All right,
this was an old one, Jeff. I had to bring it up before we lost it.
I appreciate it. The live chat's going nuts right now. $5 from Dave Dixon. It's his first time in the live chat. Go Steelers. Welcome, Dave. Thank you very much. Get this one up here. Nicholas Gabriel, $2. Says, went to the game, didn't get a big press punt, frowny face. My gosh, that's horrible. I swear. I mean, and what's really worse is that Jordan Berry actually kicked the ball really well tonight. And so it's tough. That's tough. But go ahead.
We know what happened.
They gave Jordan Berry the whole game just like they did.
No, they didn't.
Was Presley Hartman's punt in the second half? They didn't have to punt.
Presley Hartman was the holder in the second half.
So he was going to get the second half.
It was Boswell and Berry the first half, and it was Harvin and Sloman the second half, but they never punted in the second half.
Yeah. Anyways, enough. For once, we're not really going to talk about punters too much. There was actually some other stuff going on, and a lot of the stuff happened right off the bat that had nothing to do with the game. The fact that the rumors are swirling. As I was driving home, I'll be honest, I missed probably the Philadelphia drive to start the game. I missed it. I was listening to it on the radio. I had work. I was getting home late. I had to call Bryan and tell him that the game was on NFL Network so he could watch it instead of listen to it. And so all of a sudden, my phone starts going nuts, and it's Michael Beck saying, there's rumors that the Steelers are making a trade. Okay, Michael's been known to go off the deep end a little bit on some of this stuff, so we were patient, and then all of a sudden it kind of came to fruition that maybe this is true. Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network saying the Steelers and the Jacksonville Jaguars are reportedly trading for inside linebacker Joe Schobert, formerly of the Cleveland Browns. Guys, we don't know. This is not official yet. This is just reported. Right now, Mike Tomlin was asked about it in his post-game press conference and just kind of said, I can't talk about that, anything like that right now. Knee-jerk reaction, though, on the trade rumors. Bryan, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
I have always been a fan of Joe Schobert. I'm really excited for this move. So if it is a move, that's going to be fantastic. I love the fact that his wife came out first and said, Yins are really going to love this one or something like that. But she threw that out there. So apparently, I don't know if she's from the area or if she's researched Yins. I don't know. You would think that she is, but
well, he played in Cleveland. They probably know what that is. I mean,
that's true. But how many times have we seen a solid effort from Joe Schobert, and especially in that horrible game, November 14th of 2019, how he showed up and he was just kicking the heck out of the Steelers and doing so many different things. So I would love to see a guy like that. When he was a free agent last year, he was one of the top inside linebackers on my list in the free agent market watch, and knew that the Steelers wouldn't be going after him. But in a trade, it's a completely different story.
Now, we don't know any. We also don't know the rumors of what the Steelers are giving up for it. But Dave, what are your thoughts on the trade?
Well, couple things. First, Bryan has been on record of loving Joe Schobert when he was in Cleveland, wished he would come to Pittsburgh. We can attest to that. I don't think it's rumors. You guys were watching on NFL Network, so you were getting the Philadelphia Eagles commentators. Yes. I watched on KDKA. They announced it on the TV.
Really?
And talked about the trade. They are not going to do that if it is just rumors. Now, they haven't announced officially what it goes down for. But seriously, if they talk about it on the show, I mean, they brought up something on the screen about it, and Charlie Batch and Bob Pompiani were going on about it. Wow. So I don't think it's a rumor anymore. I think that makes it that it's happening. I like it, the fact that especially when you saw some of the inside linebacker play early in the Hall of Fame game. Now you're saying it wasn't Devin Bush, true, but you kind of wanted to see those other guys step up. What was crazy was I think it was the last drive of the first half for the Eagles. It was when they got the field goal and they were pinned deep, 2-minute drill. So yeah, it definitely was the last drive of the first half. They mainly threw the ball. They threw the ball at 3 players total on that drive. They threw it at UG3, Justin Lane, and Robert Spillane. Those were the 3 that they threw at. And they got big plays early. But then when it got to first down, when they got right there for long field goal range, they went at, I think first it was Justin Lane. And he made the play. Then they went at Spillane and he made the play. Then they went at UG3 and he made the play. So all 3 of them that they were picking on, they all each made one play in order to hold it to a field goal. So, but that just kind of goes to show where the Steelers sit when it comes to inside linebackers in the passing game. So we'll have to see if Schobert can bring that to Steel City.
And once it becomes official or we get some more information, we'll put it that way, on that trade, I'm sure we'll have a breaking news podcast for you here at Behind the Steel Curtain, wherever you get your podcasts, or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do. Now, this might be your first time stumbling upon the post-game podcast, whether it's live on Facebook or on YouTube. What we do is we run through the box score. We go through who did well, who didn't do well. We start off typically with the offense in the first half, and then we go to the defense in the second half. So with that being said, let's go right at it with the Mason Rudolph at the quarterback position. He started the game 8 for 9, 77 yards, 8.6 average. He was sacked once for 10 yards and a rating of 102.3. Dwayne Haskins comes in 16 of 22, 161 yards, 7.3 average, 1 touchdown, a rating of 108.3. Joshua Dobbs finishes up 5 of 6 for 30 yards, 5-yard average. He did throw an interception, pretty bad one, rating of 47.9. The passing total, 29 of 37 for 258 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 1 sack. Gentlemen, quarterbacks, let's talk about it. Start with you, Bryan. Go ahead.
I thought it was a pretty decent effort from the quarterbacks. That one interception by Joshua Dobbs was ugly, but the guys I was really looking at, of course, Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, and I thought they both showed up this week. Dwayne Haskins really needed to have a very good showing to not drop out of the conversation, because last week was not great for him. And now Dave did explain it, that he was going over the looks and what the defense was getting him. This week, he had more chances to throw downfield. He looked solid doing it. He did have that touchdown pass. He led them on a couple of scoring drives. So very solid game from him. Dave and I were talking before the show on Mason Rudolph and thought he had a pretty good effort. And what killed his drives was basically those penalties. Those penalties really knocked them out of a field goal range and knocked them into deep third downs. So it was one of those situations where I don't think he was bad at all.
Dave, what are your thoughts on the quarterback?
Yeah, Bryan brought up some really great points there. You've got to remember who's going against the ones and who's going against the twos, because you got to think about this. This was Philly's first preseason game, so they had their main guys out there even less. And of course, it was former Steeler Javon Hargrave getting the big sack on Mason Rudolph to end his time. But bottom line is the penalties killed Rudolph's drives. I'd love to see what would have happened if it wasn't for that. I'd like to see the two of them switched just to see. I would expect more from Rudolph if he was playing against the people that Haskins was. And I think I'd like to see Haskins step up and play against those better players. I think he would do well. I have confidence in basically all three of the quarterbacks. Josh Dobbs, that interception, it was third down, and at least he was trying to make a throw that would get a first down. You still don't want to do that and turn the ball over and not punt it. Maybe you don't. Maybe that wasn't the wisest thing, but at least he didn't throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage on the 3rd and 7, if you know what I mean. But with Haskins, what really opened him up was that free play. When he got that free play, and then he stepped up, slid out to the right, wide open guy in the end zone. I mean, absolutely blown coverage. I mean, I think any of the quarterbacks could have made that throw. And honestly, the best thing Haskins had going for him was the time he had to throw. That offensive line against that part of the Phillies defense, they were opening up massive holes for the running game and giving Haskins tons of time to throw. And when he had time to throw and could look downfield, he was doing a good job of it. So, yes, he had some really good opportunities, and he did everything he needed to do to take advantage of them.
Let's get Austin Smith, who gave us 5 Canuck bucks. He said, I want Haskins to be good, but I hope people don't overreact with some plays like his touchdown, which was wide open. I want to see quarterbacks switch first and second team, like you just mentioned, Dave. Now, Mike Tomlin did say that next week, Ben Roethlisberger, they play on Saturday next week against the Detroit Lions.
Nationally televised.
Yes. Ben Roethlisberger will be playing, so that'll switch things up a little bit. Ben typically gets a couple drives, and then he's done. Who they play after that, I'm sure will be discussed this week leading up to that game. I want to reiterate what David mentioned there at the end of his talking points with the quarterbacks is something that Dwayne Haskins had that I think Mason Rudolph didn't, and that was a dominant left side of the offensive line. Kevin Dotson and Dan Moore Jr. were literally just mauling people. And when they ran to the left side, it was open 24 hours a day. I mean, it was unbelievable. That's where all the big runs came from when they tried to run to the right side, which is Chaz Green. It just was not the same. So that
Chaz Green looked pretty good, though. Honestly,
he did. But
for my expectations of him, he number 74.
Yeah,
all right.
But I'll tell you what, when you can run the football like they were doing, it makes it a heck of a lot easier on the quarterback. Play action works. Everything was working. I will say this, though, and I'll throw it back to you guys to get your take. Dwayne Haskins just looks more comfortable in this offense. He looks he did a lot of this stuff in college at Ohio State with the motions and, run pass options. Not that there's a ton of that in the current Matt Canada offense, but it just seems to me that just on face value, not looking at statistics or who they're playing with, it just looks like Haskins is more comfortable. You agree or disagree, Bryan?
No, I agree 100%. I think he does look comfortable in this offense, and I think he's got a maturity about him that we haven't seen before, and it's a lot of the accountability that, he is being held accountable, and he is getting good coaching, good direction from Mike Sullivan, Matt Canada, Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger. So I really think that this has helped him, and those kind of things help you relax also.
Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he does. I'll be honest with you. What kind of helps is I don't want to say that they're better, but the second team offensive line blocking for Haskins was tonight, I would say, was just as good, if not better, than the first team. It could have just been the matchups, but like you said, Kevin Dotson, Dan Moore Jr., BJ Finney playing guard. I was the first one down on BJ Finney because we had nothing to go off of from 2020 other than not being on the field. But especially at guard, he's been doing a nice job. So it's kind of nice to have that next offensive line come in, and wasn't really a drop off when you could tell there was a drop off in who was playing defense for the Eagles. So it's a little bit easier to be more comfortable when you can sit back in there. My goodness, one time he threw the ball. I can't remember if it was him or Dobbs. I really can't. Where they pointed it out on KDKA that he threw it to his fourth read. And he still had no one anywhere close to him when he threw it.
Yeah.
It was, so it's funny. I think you are exactly right that he is more comfortable. My question is, Is he benefiting from that? And I mean, I'm not going to hold that against him because bottom line is he's doing a great job with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let's move on from the quarterback talk. We could talk about this all night. Let's go to the running backs. The running game. Pittsburgh Steelers overall finished with 42 carries, 152 yards, a 3.6 average, 2 touchdowns, and a long run of 12 yards. That belonged to Jalen Samuels. Tony Brooks-James finished with the 9 carries, 51 yards, 5.7 average. Jalen Samuels, 10 rushes for 45. That's obviously a 4.5 average with 1 touchdown. Anthony McFarland, 9 carries for 34 yards, 3.8 yards, and 1 touchdown. Everyone wants to know Najee Harris. He did have some big runs, but they were all brought back. Najee Harris, 2 carries, 10 yards, and a long of 6. Gentlemen, what do you think about the running game and the running backs? Bryan, we'll start with you.
Well, I tell you what, it was definitely a shame that they called that Freiermuth call. And if you were watching the Philadelphia broadcast, Ross Tucker actually said, "Yeah, I don't really even think that was a hold." And he was saying that as a Philadelphia broadcaster, which made me feel a little bit better. But they did make fun of him because linemen are going to stick up for guys getting an unjust hold. But nonetheless, everything looked good. Even those 4-yard runs, the little stuff. I mean, and a 4-yard run is not a little run, but Najee Harris kind of makes it look simple. And then when you're seeing Ant Mac have some decent runs, and then Jalen Samuels, who I've been down on, doing it as well, then all of a sudden you've got Tony Brooks-James. And number 30, is that the new guy that just came in?
Pete Guerrero.
Yeah. And he had a nice run. But
Sounds
that
like
was
a
called back
wrestler's name.
well. Pete Guerrero. Oh, the famous Guerrero family.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of Pedro Guerrero.
What's that?
Remember Pedro Guerrero from the Cardinals and the Dodgers back in the day. So Pete Guerrero looked. I mean, that was a pretty nice run too. So it seemed like they have the running game back, but again, I mean, this is second half football in a preseason game, but it's nice to see some of that. And it's nice to see the offensive linemen getting some push.
I said it on Twitter. I said, I don't care if it's a preseason or not. I love seeing the Steelers be able to run the ball like they had been. I don't care if it was against their 5th string. This is what you should do. And Mike Tomlin said it, and I agree with him 100%. You could tell that the bigs, their big guys, Steelers big guys, were in better condition than Philadelphia. They were going fine. And you can tell Mike Tomlin's big on conditioning. But Dave, back to you with the running backs. Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, I liked Najee Harris getting hit in the backfield, 1 yard in the backfield, and he still gets a 6-yard gain out of it. He broke it and just carried people. The 2 plays that were huge. I mean, I wish I knew exactly how many yards they were. I'd have to go back and watch a replay because you can't find it in the stats because they got wiped out. But the first one, I could tell you that when Freiermuth was called with the hold, from what it looked like to me, he went to the ground and he pulled the guy down with him. The guy was going to fall down anyway. It didn't help Harris bust that out. The hold didn't lead to that. And then the other one you guys said, I assume was was it the Turner one? They did not replay that on my broadcast, so I don't know if that was the one that was the bad call, but I don't think that really led to Harris busting out those runs. So even though they didn't count in the scorebook, man, they still were impressive. I like what I'm seeing there. I like what he did. I mean, was it just the one pass that he was thrown, but for 9 yards? That was impressive. But all in all, especially in the second half, it was all about the offensive line. It didn't matter what running back you put in there. They were getting such a big push. Like if you read the knee-jerk reaction article at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, Big Brosco said, Jalen Samuels with a big run, but Myron Cope could have ran through that one. I mean, it was just at the point of attack, there was like 6 or 7 yards downfield, and it was just fanned open for him to just go. I mean, it was the up the middle running that I really liked late in the game. It was just they could do whatever they wanted. When
you talk about Najee Harris and him making the first guy miss, it it makes a visual for what he was talking about when he met with the media. And this was, I think, early last week, maybe, where he talked about during a training camp practice, Pat Fryermuth missed a block. And he came up to him and said, Najee, like, hey, my bad, or whatever. And he said, look, Pat, look, if you miss your block, just go find the next guy and block him. I'm going to make one guy miss. In that way, you're not giving up on the play, and you're going to block the next guy. And when you hear him say that, you're like, well, it's kind of that's very confident. We'll put it that way. It's kind of arrogant. He does. He makes the first guy miss us all the time. So I like the running game in the first half, the offensive line. And let's talk about that while we're on the topic of the offensive line. Let's talk about the running game in particular, the offensive line. I thought the starting offensive line struggled at times. I'm not shocked. It was the first time getting guys like Chuks Okorafor, Trey Turner out there. What were your thoughts on the offensive line from start to finish? Brian, we'll start with you.
You know what? As the game wore on, they found their footing, but it wasn't everybody the same. But I did not think that it was a terrible effort from the beginning. There's now a lot of people are really down on the offensive line. I've heard a lot of people down on Chuks, that they like Dan Moore so much better in this game. I still need to watch it a little bit better. You know, it's hard to focus on the line when you're watching a Philadelphia broadcast or when you're just watching the game on a preseason game's a lot tougher to focus on them when you're not watching an all 22. But, you know, I think that they're getting an identity from Adrian Clem. I think that they're going to turn this into something a little bit better. And I don't think it's going to be the death knell to this team. So I would just watch it, keep gelling. And I know we can't wait for baby steps, but that's what's going to happen. But each week, I think you're going to see a little bit more out of that line.
Okay, Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it shows, if anything, they have quality depth. Maybe very well coached if that's the guys that need coached up. But what's going to happen? Quality depth is great, but you can only keep so many, and then who's to say they can even get to the practice squad after that? But you know, we'll see how it all shakes down. I still don't know that the guys that were doing so well out there that I'm ready to put ahead of the guys that were in there just because of who they were matched up against. I like to generally, when I watch the game, try to catch every play twice. I watch what it is, and then I rewind to watch the offensive line after I know what the play is going to be. But I did not have that capability to do that here, so I've got to tomorrow. I'm going to have to break down a little bit more with that starting group of the offensive line in order to do that. But if nothing else, gotta love the depth.
Zach Banner did not play in this game, correct? Because again, I missed the beginning. He did not play. So Joe Haig started at right tackle. So still, we got to remember, I thought Kevin Dotson and Dan Moore, I mentioned that earlier when we were talking about Dwayne Haskins. I thought they played great. I think that Kevin Dotson is going to be the starting left guard by the time week one rolls around. And then when you think about Zach Banner at right tackle, still have yet to see the starting offensive line play together. And now we're kind of getting into the witching hour where you only have 2 games left. Is it concerning to you, Brian, that they have not played yet with only 2 preseason games remaining, or do they still have plenty of time?
I think they still have some time, but the crucial game is next week. I mean, that's 10 days from now. So Saturday against the Detroit Lions, these guys have got to get in there, and that's probably the game where you see the most out of your starters, because it used to be back in the day when I was first watching preseason, the 80s and the 90s, where the 4th preseason game, you saw most of the team, and it's completely different now. It's the 3rd preseason game where you see more starters than ever. And so that's where you need to see these guys to be able to be on the field, definitively on September 12th.
Dave, what do you think about that?
We've got to remember that this will be the Steelers' 3rd preseason game, but it's only going to be the Lions' 2nd.
Yeah.
Just like this was the Eagles' 1st one, even though it was the Steelers' 2nd. And you might not see all the starters for the Lions when you're going to see them for the Steelers just because of how it all plays out. I don't know how teams that only have 3 games are going to do are they going to play their people in game 2? The Steelers have the luxury of 4, so they're playing it it appears that they're playing it how they would have played it in years past with 4 games. So I expect other teams to play their starters in the last game because then they have 2 weeks off. But I don't know. So that's going to be interesting in this matchup. I am looking forward to see it. I want to see the group that they're going to have for the offensive line out there. I really do. And it might come down to that if Kevin Dotson, who looked like, even though Coach Hartman didn't want to talk about the post-game press conference,
hates talking about it.
Kevin Dotson looks like he's the guy that needs to be out there based on tonight. I want to know how well he plays next to Chooks. That's a big question mark because we just saw how he plays next to Dan Moore Jr.
Yes.
And they played well together.
Yes.
I want to see if Dotson can bring the same thing with Chooks next to him. That's really what I want to see from this.
Yeah, very good point. Andrew Palladino, $4.99 the tip jar thing. He says, my Wheeling friend, he follows me on Twitter, both from Wheeling. So yes, Andrew, good to talk to some people from Wheeling, West Virginia, our old stomping grounds. He said, what did Yins think of those Philly commentators? They were awful. Brian and I can attest they were awful.
I'll catch him on the replay.
Yeah. He said, I live in D.C., so I was SOL on that KDKA stream. I feel good about this team. You know what, Andrew? I actually am starting to feel pretty good about this team as well. There's question marks, but there's question marks on every team right now. There's no one that's sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, we're good. Let's just punch a ticket to the Super Bowl. Not even the Chiefs, not even the Buccaneers. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And people keep bringing up Jordan Berry, who did play well. I'll give him credit. I'll give him credit where credit's due. I'll say it now.
He only got it to the 2. Big Press got it to the 1.
There you go. That's the difference.
He did. He's twice as good.
All right. Last thing to talk about here, receivers. Let's get through the receiving core. The Steelers, boy, did they target a lot of people. Dave, you have to count
15.
15. Nice.
Yeah, that's going in my article for tomorrow. And all 15 of them had a catch.
Yeah, that's true. Very good.
Crazy.
29 receptions for 268 yards, a 9.2 average, 1 touchdown. The lone touchdown was to Anthony Johnson. Long pass play was 33 yards, and that was Deontay Johnson with that catch. So, to Rico Bussey finishes the 4 for 45. Deontay Johnson 3 for 41. Cody White 5 for 39. Juju Smith-Schuster 3 for 22. It's good to see him get in the mix, guys. What do you think about the receiving core, Brian? We'll start with you.
I thought they were fantastic. I really enjoyed that long play to Deontay Johnson in the first quarter. I thought that was pretty special. I know that was not against that was the second drive, so that was not against starters, but still I thought it was a great play too. I think he's really energized. Like you said, I also like Juju Smith-Schuster being in the mix. I really thought that with all those targets, I mean, sure, not all these guys are going to make the team, but you've got guys like Cody White who look pretty good, and you have Rico Bussey, and you have those guys that some of them will be on the practice squad. Some of those will still be around, and you might see players like that. I mean, we didn't see much from Simmons this week, but Anthony Johnson showed up once again. So I got to tell you, with these receivers, I really thought that they looked good. How much better are they going to look when Ben Roethlisberger's in there?
That's a good point, Dave. What are your thoughts about the receiving core?
Yeah, I liked what they brought out there. Didn't like the end around that. It seemed like Claypool was trying to get to the corner when he could have cut it upfield for a couple yards, but you know that's what when you give a wide receiver a handoff, a lot of times that's what you're going to get. But yeah, Bryan brought up that long pass to Deontay Johnson. I feel like the receivers were doing everything that they needed to do up and down. I thought that the tight ends, I mean, you could say, what was it? Was it Gentry or was it Raider that had they're both big and wearing 8 and a straight number. I can remember that had the pass behind him.
Gentry.
He got his hands on it. It was Gentry. Okay.
Yeah.
He got his hands on it, so you'd like to make him catch it, but it was not a good throw. You have to admit. But even the running backs and their plays in the passing game with Najee Harris, I mean, Jalen Samuels, that was a dump off but he does a much better job of making a guy miss when he's getting the ball in space on a catch than he does when he's running the ball. And I know some people were complaining that he went out of bounds. His job there was to take the angle to get the first down, which he did. And then therefore it just took him out of bounds, which I have no problem with that. He got the first down on a 3rd and long. So just all in all, just great effort by up and down the board.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the receiving core looks as deep as ever. I mean, it looks like if they were to somehow, I don't know, with the trade rumors, maybe if they were to package James Washington, who's banged up right now, into a deal, that they'd probably be okay, that they might be able to find someone that can duplicate that type of success, which I think is pretty minimal, to be honest. Let's get Vernon. Woody gave us $4.99. He says, what do you guys think about the trade the Steelers made? We talked about that, Vernon, at the beginning of the show. Go back and check that out. We like it. We think it's a good addition. I think he's going to be able to compete for a starting job right away. That doesn't mean he's going to be given it, but yeah. Dave, you got to say something?
Well, we want to see what the Steelers gave up, and the rumors are that Jacksonville's taking on some of the money. That they might be taking on some of it. I think some of the possible bonuses he was supposed to have might be what did this guy do?
That's what I don't get. Like, you're going to trade a guy away and give away all this money. Like, what in the heck? Like, that doesn't.
New head coach wants his guys.
That's true. Good point.
It is what it is.
Well, we'll talk about the defensive. We'll talk about the defense in a second. We're going to go over to part 2. So if you're watching live on Facebook or on YouTube, stay tuned. We're not going anywhere. If you're on the audio side, head over to part 2 to hear us talk about defense and a lot more. Stay tuned. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the Steelers Post-Game Podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined, as always, by Dave Schofield and Bryan Anthony Davis. We just talked about the offense, so if you missed it, go back and check it out, whether it's part 1 or at the beginning of this show. Now we're talking about the defense, and there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to diagnose, a lot to unpack, we'll put it that way. Let's talk about the Steelers' pass defense first, as I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, their quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, thanks to a really long screen pass, finishes 10 for 17, 178 and a touchdown. He was sacked once. It's always good to see Flacco on his backo. Jalen Hurts finishes 3 for 754. And Nick Mullins 1 for 5 with 2 interceptions. He had more completions to the Steelers. Yards. He had more completions to the Steelers than the Eagles. What do you think about what do you think about the Steelers? We'll just say defensive, like pass defense, and the Steelers were able to create some turnovers. They did get after the quarterback, had 2 sacks, 6 quarterback hits. Bryan, we'll start with you.
You know what? I thought it was a pretty good effort all along. Where Mike Tomlin said something very poignant in the press conference and about the defensive play. And he said, hey, we're just looking at note cards out there. We're just throwing them out there and to see what they can do. We're not looking at defensive scheme right now. And so we kind of hinted on that last week when we were talking about the inside linebackers and all the passes up the middle. So it just seemed like this was an area where the Steelers, where you could say, yes, they were struggling, but no, I thought they came up with some plays. We had my guy with a great name, Lafayette Pitts, with an interception, and your boy Lustin Jane had an interception too. If I'm going ahead of myself, I do apologize, but it's just one of those things that the defense came to play, and these guys are they're fighting for their spots, and everybody seems to be doing it.
Dave, what do you think about the Steelers pass defense?
Steelers pass defense, that was just a bad play. Come on. The ball was caught behind or at the line of scrimmage, and you run it for 79 yards. That's not as much pass defense as that is, tackle the catch defense, which was really bad on that one play. What is it about the Philadelphia Eagles where you could say, oh, the team did really, really well if you take this one play away? That's exactly what happened last year with the run game, because they gave up the one huge run, and that was it. And that's kind of what happened here. The pass defense, I thought overall, Jeffrey Benedict really laid it out in the Slack channel, and he put it in the live chat tonight if you weren't paying attention. that the Steelers right now in the passing game are not doing any favors for their inside linebackers. They're putting them in very difficult spots because they're not doing anything too complex with their defense, and therefore they're getting a little bit exposed. Devin Bush on the one play early, he stumbled. You could see that he stumbled. I don't think it was that he was questioning his knee or anything like that. He stumbled. But until that long 79-yard touchdown pass, the only receivers that had made catches were tight ends. It was the tight ends were getting into everything a whole lot more. But the pass defense in all, other than a few miscues, I was happy with it. And, I mean, the Steelers only had 2 sacks, but the pass rush, we'll talk about that separately, won't we?
What's that?
The pass rush. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that separately. I mean,
I won't get into it now.
No, that's fine. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the secondary players. My boy Lustin. And if you don't know why I called Justin Lane Lustin Jane, you got to go back to last season and his interaction with me on Twitter. And that's neither here nor there. But the Steelers defensive secondary had a good job. They did a good job, obviously, with 2 interceptions. I'm looking here. Pass defenses 3. They did a good job. So let's talk about
had one of them. I know
he did, yeah. And half a sack. Good for him.
Yes.
So let's talk about the secondary though. There are some names I was hoping to hear that I didn't hear much about James Pierre. Every now and then I was hoping to see something from Shakur Brown, even in garbage time, nothing. Bryan, what's your thought on the secondary?
I also wanted to see Mark Gilbert, and he didn't seem to show up as well. But the second, I just didn't see much from him. But I will say that I thought that James Pierre had nice coverage in the first half a couple of times when they did show him. So I don't think he didn't do anything completely flashy, but he was there and he got it done. Now, the one guy that I was kind of if I could say one player that I was not as impressed with that we really need to be impressed with is number 20, Cam Sutton. If it's maybe it's just not me. Well, good. Dave's agreeing with me.
Totally. You're exactly right.
I just really thought that he was subpar tonight, and that's a big concern.
Dave, what do you think about the secondary?
Yeah, Cam Sutton, it was a really fast guy he was going against, and he was with him until the ball was in the air, and then he got separation on him. I don't think it was completed, though, the one main play that we're talking about. When it comes to the secondary, I'm going to tell you the truth. If you look at these guys' snap count after the game, if they finally ever come out, it usually takes them a day or so to get some snap counts. If you see guys in the secondary that are getting more snaps and you're not seeing them in the game, that's good. That's exactly what you want to see. Like, I was noticing number 17 out there a lot, and he didn't have balls thrown his way. That's Mark Gilbert, in case those of you that don't know who all the numbers are. So he was out there a good bit, and I saw him not being thrown at. All in all, like, even your boy Lustin Jane with the pick, he had some pretty rough plays, and he had some pretty good plays. Now, I will tell you on the interception, I don't know if he gets that interception if it wasn't for Jameer Jones.
The pressure. Yeah, it was the pressure.
Yes. So that helped, but you still got to make the play and do it, which he did. So he also had that one on that 2-minute drill when the defense was out there. If they'd have thrown a flag for that for pass interference, I don't think Steelers Nation would have complained.
No.
But they didn't. They let it go. So that's the thing with him is I don't know that he's giving you consistent play across the board, but I still agree with Bryan with the whole notion of Cam Sutton that was a little bit concerning. I still want to go back and see the long touchdown run and really who kind of blew that as much as anything.
Well, let's reiterate something here. If someone like James Pierre or even Justin Lane, and Justin Lane was in my article for 5 defensive players to watch. Why? Because you got to show up at some point. You got to make a play. And he made a play, whether it was because of Jameer Jones or not is neither here nor there. If they can get someone on the outside, then Cam Sutton doesn't have to play on the outside. He doesn't have to be there every single down, and that gives him the flexibility to move people around. So if they get more contributions from other players, that's also beneficial. All right, let's talk defensive pass rush now. Let's get after the pass rushers here, and we'll talk about the run defense as well. Like I said, 2 sacks. Isaiah Loudermilk and Quincy Roche split one. Jameer Jones had the other. Quarterback hits, they had 6. Gentlemen, let's talk pass rush. Bryan, we'll start with you.
Quincy Roche, Q from the U again. I love this guy, but Jameer Jones is the guy that I'm completely infatuated with. Number 44. He's the guy that you're hoping that really makes a push. I mean, there's a couple guys there. I mean, of course, now that Melvin Ingram's there, you've got to think that it might be Cassius Marsh and Jameer Jones fighting for that a 5th spot, maybe, if they go ahead with a 5th spot. So Schobert coming into town, if that does ring true, that kind of changes things a little bit too, because usually they go 5 and 4 inside linebackers, 5 outside linebackers, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's really what they'll do. So I mean, each time you would expect them to it's usually 9. It's usually that formula. So at this point, what does Schobert do for the inside linebackers? Are they going to keep 5 and you have 2 of those guys out? But the Foil King, Cassius Marsh, might be in trouble here because Jameer Jones is really making it happen.
So let's talk, Dave, we'll get to you in a sec. Let's talk about these numbers, because we just did our roster predictions just the other day. Dave and I did predicting the 53. With Schobert, personally, I think that makes it really difficult to keep someone like Marcus Allen. Bryan and Dave agree or disagree? Doesn't matter.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree.
So that could be you get Schobert, you lose Allen. Now, Jameer Jones, I mean, I know that people say, oh, it's just another Tuzar skipper. I don't think so. Tuzar skipper was kind of like a flash in the pan. You wouldn't notice him, and then you get a sack. Like, oh, wow, this guy. I noticed Jameer Jones in a whole lot of ways, even when he's not making a splash play like a sack or a tackle for a loss. So let's say you're going to keep Jameer Jones. Why keep Cassius Marsh at all? You could then just have Jameer Jones. It's not a lot of experience backing up, but do you keep that many? Dave, we'll start with you. What would you do if you want to keep Jameer Jones? How do you make the room?
Well, I think you're right. I think it would probably have to be Marsh. But here's the other thing you can look at here. If you keep Jameer Jones and Q from the U, you're not dressing both of them on game day. You have one of your inactives there every week, unless there's an injury.
And honestly, would you not agree that
I don't think they need to.
As of right now, it would be Q from the U that wouldn't get the helmet. Jameer Jones he seems like
it all comes down to the special teams there, because really, when it comes to the outside linebacker, you're going to have your top 3 get your snaps. Do you really want to take snaps away from as many as you want to give Melvin Ingram just to get those other guys snaps? I think it's going to come down to special teams with those guys, as long as they're valuable there, which they appear to be. Keep the youth, develop them, and then that way, if you don't have if after Melvin Ingram's contract is up next year, you don't know what happens there, not assuming he's back, then you have these up and coming players that could step in, and basically for the following year would be almost like 2 dogs, 1 bone for the other guy in the rotation.
My boy Brad puts it well. I forgot about this as well. He said, get Schobert, lose UG3. So maybe you keep
I was
Marcus
thinking that
Allen,
too.
And you
I don't know
UG3.
which one they would keep. I don't know.
That's tough. Bryan,
did anyone see Buddy Johnson tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was. I saw 51 in there on both sides of the ball, but I saw because you have Trey Turner too.
Yeah.
But no, I saw some Buddy Johnson. I think I saw him on 1 tackle, but it wasn't anything that he wasn't all over the place and
not
making
like
tons
the week
of tackles.
before.
Yeah.
I don't think he played as much either.
Yeah.
So he might not have played until the 4th quarter, garbage time. I blame Michael Beck for distracting me on Twitter. He got me into this whole stupid feud about followers. It's like, why are we talking about this?
I saw that.
Anyways, so okay.
Well,
Dave, go ahead and talk about
that blue check mark does something to you.
Hey, Mr. Captain Blue check mark. That's what he gets.
Goes right to your head.
Yeah.
What are we talking about now?
I think we're talking about the pass rush.
Yeah, the pass rush. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was there. I thought a few times early, Jeff, you might not have seen this because of when you got there,
right?
That they should have gotten there and gotten a sack, or at least gotten a little bit more to disrupt the play, and they just didn't quite get home in that first group. With the whole game, I'll say it: offense, defense, everything. The most troubling thing with these first two games is the first half, and that's when you have more of your players that are going to see more time during the season. So, I mean, when you're talking about only scoring 7 points in 2 games in the first half, and then you're talking about giving up 16 points in the first half in this game, that's what you really gotta be concerned with. It's nice to feel good about the Steelers, coming back, dominating the second half, getting the win, but these might not be the guys that are even on the roster or the guys seeing the field. But back to the pass rush, I don't think it ever disappeared, but there was some times that it didn't just quite get home. But all in all, I thought they kept the pressure on pretty well.
I loved what Mike Tomlin said after the game, and Bryan alluded to this earlier, where he said their defensive plays are basically on like one index card. In other words, they're not game planning. They literally want to see what their players can do. And it sounded like it's one of those situations where, hey, if you get hung out to dry, we want to see how you react. And they got hung out to dry, obviously, on the screen pass. And there were a couple other plays, even going back to Dallas last week. So they're using it as an evaluation. But like Dave said, they're still keeping opponents off the scoreboard for the most part, giving up 16 points. Are you going to complain about that? They shut them out in the second half. Good.
No, I'm going to give you guys a quick trivia question.
Okay.
Tonight's game trivia question.
Sure.
How many offensive plays did the Eagles run in the second half?
Let's see here. I'm going to go with 12. It's probably more than that.
I'll go with 16.
Should have gone the other way with Jeff. It was 11. No first downs, 11. The reason we didn't see these guys on defense is they had 11 plays in the second half to work with. That's it.
And that's why you didn't see Buddy
domination
Johnson.
on that end, on that side of the ball. So you can't complain about it. But honestly, you didn't get a very good look. I mean, you didn't get any look from Presley Harvin. I almost called him Percy. You didn't get any look on him punting the ball, only with the holds. Got to see lots of holds from him, Jeff.
He did a good job. He did a good job.
Yeah, they hit everything. But the other problem is you just didn't get to see as much on the defense from these guys. And think about that: 11 plays on defense, and 2 of them were turnovers.
Well, it's funny you said did Buddy Johnson play. That's why we didn't notice Buddy Johnson, because they only played 11.
After I asked that question, I started looking this up, and I'm like, wait, did he have a chance? And that's pretty much it.
I'm trying to look at the stat sheet here and see if he even registered a tackle.
On Yahoo, they don't have him with one.
They don't.
I was also on the Steelers site, and they didn't have him with one either that I could find.
Yeah, no, they didn't. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, let's do an offensive game ball. You're giving an offensive game ball away. Just do one. Bryan, we'll go with you first.
Dwayne Haskins. I thought he showed up. I thought he did what he needed to do for him and the team. And I really like number 3 this week.
All right. Very good. I think that's an obvious game ball. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, that was the obvious one that Bryan took. So I don't blame him. I'm trying to come up with somebody else because I thought that was so hands down who it was. Other than that, let's just go the second team offensive line.
See, man, you're killing
the
me.
Answer's Haskins. The answer's Haskins. But if you want a different answer, I got to do something else.
Well, you did it too vague. I was going to say Kevin Dotson because in my opinion,
I thought about that.
Kevin Dotson has been drugged through the mud for no reason of his own. He did nothing. Okay, this has been all about reports and stupid rumors and twisting words and these comments by Mike Tomlin. And you know what? At first time out, he did exactly what he should have done. He was a freaking road grader against second team players. So you know what, Tomlin? You don't like talking about him, probably because everything you ever say about him gets kind of misconstrued and twisted into a different narrative. I thought Kevin Dotson did exactly what he was supposed to do tonight, and he should be with the ones, if not next week, by the regular season, where he belongs, I should say. Okay, let's go to defense. Defensive game ball. Bryan, go.
I'm going to say Jameer Jones. I know I'm on his bandwagon, but this is kind of tough because Dave just said 11 when you only have 11 plays on defense. So it's he got in there, he had the sack, but he also he had half a sack, but also he had half the sack with Loudermilk, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He did.
And then he also caused that interception from Justin Lane. So I'm going to go with number 44.
Jones was credited with a full sack. It was Loudermilk and Roche who split a sack.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah. I was getting mixed up with,
and he had two quarterback hits, Jameer Jones.
Yeah.
But your point is still valid, Bryan. Okay. That was
absolutely.
One. Yeah. Dave.
Yeah.
Your game ball.
That was a really good one, Bryan. That's my number one guy. If I have to come up with someone else, the only other person I could really say is, he got a half a sack and he knocked down a pass. Why not the milkman? Loudermilk. I mean, he didn't look bad out there. He might have looked bad on other plays, but the plays that he stood out, he's the only other guy stat sheet wise that you could really even. I mean, unless you want to go with one of the guys with the interceptions, but that was basically Pitts' only play, and Lane had some good plays, but he had some not so good plays. So that's why I'm going there.
I am going to go with someone that had an interception, and I am going to go with my boy Justin
Yeah.
Lane. And it's
Nice.
based on the fact that when I was putting together the 5 players to watch, I did 5 for offense, 5 for defense. I've done it all for both preseason games. I'll probably continue to do it. I was like, you know what? Justin Lane needs to actually make a play. Just make a freaking play. Make a play. And he did. He made a play. Did he make some bad plays? I thought that he got away with one. Like Dave mentioned earlier, it could have at least been illegal contact. But it doesn't – no one's going to remember that. They're going to remember the interception. And Mike Tomlin talks a lot about those plays in the preseason that are memorable, that still are like, they stick with you. So good for Justin Lane to go out there and make a play. He has to build on that now. The Steelers, and I hope he wins. I hope he does a good job. I don't want the organization to swing and miss on a 3rd round pick from Michigan State. Are you serious? That would be, oh my gosh, it'd be horrible. That's such a bad mark on the organization if he doesn't pan out. So I hope he does that. And we'll see. We shall see. All right, let's do some final thoughts about the game. Let's wrap this up. Bryan, we'll go with you first.
I was not expecting much from this game going into it. I was expecting a whole lot less when I saw them down 10-0 and just not playing the best brand of football early on. But there's a lot of hearts beating in chests of 90 men that are trying to make this squad, and there is going to be 37 going home unhappy. I mean, the ones that make the practice squad, yeah, they'll still be around as well. But, these guys are fighting. I would say this preseason so far, these are the most fighters that I've seen in a long time. There's a lot of camp battles, and there's a lot of opportunities for undrafted free agents, and they really showed up tonight. But the guy that really needed to show up, and we talked about him earlier, was Dwayne Haskins. So I stand up and give number 3 a round of applause. I want to see more from him. Mike Tomlin said we need to see more from him, and we're going to. This is going to be a great display for the Steelers coming up on Saturday night of next week. So we really need to see a lot, but I think we're seeing some stuff from guys that we didn't expect either. We're getting Lafayette Pitts, who's only been in here a few days, getting an interception, and hats off to him as well. So I can't wait to see some of these guys. It's nice to know their names and feel that there is a really great future of young players in Pittsburgh.
Dave, when they have to make a cut this week, don't they?
I was just getting ready to say that as part of my final thoughts. Absolutely.
Right. So we'll go ahead then. Go ahead and
Yeah, they have to cut 5 players by 4 p.m. on Tuesday.
Okay.
So they will have 85 going into the next preseason game. And what's sad is there's a good chance there were players out there making plays tonight that aren't going to be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers by the time they take the field again. It's kind of a shame. It's kind of sad, but this is what happens when you follow the team this closely and you see all these players. And I love it. I mean, to see what you're getting from the offensive line and things of that nature, I'm thinking that there was some pretty good coaching involved there. And some of these other players, granted, yes, the Steelers had a few extra days of training camp than what the rest of the NFL did because they had the earlier game. I don't know if it makes that much difference with your lower end guys. That just means the Steelers are taking advantage of what they were given, really. Because I mean, the guys out there in the second half for the Steelers, I mean, let's just say this: that if you're basing it just on this game, the Eagles are better off filling up their practice squad with guys off the Steelers roster than they are their own, based on what you saw tonight. So I am concerned about what you're not seeing from the first half. I know a lot of people want to put that on Mason Rudolph, but I mean, like we said, the penalties and stuff killed that drive. And that was something that I was talking about going into this game, that when you don't have the pre-snap penalties and you don't have the delay of games and things of that nature in the first preseason game, you might have a little bit more sloppiness in the second preseason game. Now, they didn't have it with the illegal formations or everything. There was the one false start. You know, you don't want those, but between the holds and those other things, that's the stuff you got to clean up. And that was the first unit out there that was causing that. I want to see more crispness in the first quarter next week, because that's the team you want to be evaluating. But Bryan's right. You got a lot of young players. The only problem is you can only keep 69 of them, with 53 on the roster and 16 on the practice squad. And that's it. So you're going to have to say goodbye to some of these guys. But I really like that a lot of them, at least tonight, were stepping up and taking them or making the most out of their opportunities.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that, you know, I'm okay with the first half being a little sloppy. It gives the coaching staff something to harp on, to say, like, look, you all still have to get better. We expect this upcoming game on Saturday to be the best yet, based on the fact that Roethlisberger will be in there. I can probably guess that if they're healthy, they're going to play. Everyone. That includes Cam Hayward. That includes, you know, Joe Hayden, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Maybe a TJ Watt deal will get done before then, and he would be in the lineup. All these players that haven't played, this is going to be their final dress rehearsal. I hate saying that, but it's the fact. It's truth. It's fact. So we'll be here every step of the way. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll have great breakdowns for you coming up, not only tomorrow, but throughout the weekend and early next week. We'll have everything to get you ready for that third preseason game against Detroit. And wherever you get your podcasts, in case you're just listening to us on YouTube or Facebook, we have so much content that's not here. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe, follow. We are everywhere you can get your podcasts. Don't miss a thing. All right, gentlemen, that's it. We'll be back next Saturday after the Detroit Lions home game at Heinz Field. In the meantime, enjoy your week. We'll see you on next post-game show. Go Steelers. 2-0. I don't care if they don't count.
Woo!